Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching this out there on the World Wide Web. This is Jeremy Geelan for SYS-CON TV. We are at the 5th Cloud Expo. We're here with one of our favorite CEOs, Treb Ryan of OpSource, who was with us just recently at the, actually it was by then only the 3rd Cloud Expo, I think, and we went to Europe, it was the 4th.
6 months is a lifetime.
It is a lifetime in cloud. Maybe we should start there, Treb. What happened since November? I mean, it just seems to be 5 years ago.
I know.
Just the fall. Why is cloud moving so fast, and what's been happening in that time? I mean, people know, but they want to hear it from an expert.
Yeah, well, it moves fast because when you can buy things by the hour, you don't have to wait a long time. When it doesn't take 6 months to spin up a new instance, a lot can happen in 6 months, as opposed to the old model.
A lot of innovation.
We really are seeing, it's amazing how quickly things are moving. Back in November, discussions were about what is it going to take for the cloud to get enterprises to adopt it, at least in our world, right? What do we have to do for security and performance and to make this an attractive environment for traditional, corporate IT? And we see not only are they willing to adopt it, but there's just explosion of ways they can adopt it. I mean, even as evidenced by the conference here, where, the number of people who provide in cloud environments is 1%, and the number of people who are extending and making it more valuable is probably 5x that number, even at these shows.
But isn't this becoming now the new modality? This is how things are happening now. It's not we'll invent a technology and wait forever for people to catch up. It's we're onto something, let's just push it out real fast. There's something big here, but we'll find out quite why in a moment.
Right, in the pattern matching, I think you're exactly, you see the same patterns we've seen maybe in the past, but at much more compressed time frames. And one pattern that very much matches to the past is the idea of how cloud can be used as part of a larger picture. For as cool as the cloud is, for the APIs and the 4 cents a CPU hour and the 3 100ths a penny for storage, it's infrastructure. It's a whole new way of getting infrastructure, but it's infrastructure. It's servers, it's storage, it's network. And no one ever sat around a boardroom table and said, what would make this a good company? A new server, right? In the end, companies want solutions. And those solutions they want better information on their marketing data or a better way to interact with their customers or their employees. And those solutions are the end product that they're looking for. And what we're finding now is that both everything from traditional SIs and VARs to big telecoms to every startup in the world are realizing that they can use the cloud infrastructure to make solutions they could never do with traditional infrastructure. And they can integrate it in ways that just wouldn't have been possible in the past. And I think that's why we're seeing this explosion of companies who are finding new ways to use cloud to solve some end problem for the customer, whether it's part of an integrated solution of telecom and hosting for a telecom provider, or whether it's a new application for single sign-on for someone who wants to use the cloud for managing their single sign-on capabilities, to extensions on how the cloud works, like with a right scale, or making it easier to switch over, like a cloud switch. All of these guys are just coming up with solutions that are based on these cloud architectures. So companies aren't saying, I'm going to buy a new server, they're saying, I'm going to get an end solution, and the cloud is a part of that.
Is there going to be a time at which the cloud part disappears? Maybe we'll even go back to elasticity as the metaphor. Or is there a point at which it just isn't useful anymore to keep labeling?
I think it would be like, I don't think it completely disappears from the conscience any more than servers disappear from the conscience. It is the infrastructure, and it is a piece of that. I think the time that people buy it directly will decrease dramatically, and buy it for the sole purpose of having a server, as opposed to right now, if you're doing an SAP implementation and you're getting HP servers to go with that, cloud's going to be a part of that. And because of how APIs work and the elasticity, it might be a greater blend than we see in servers today, because you don't have anything physically sitting in your data center. But the importance of what's being done in there doesn't ever go away. And the improvements that will make those end solutions better don't go away. But who owns the end customer? I think more and more people will be buying from solution providers as opposed to buying directly from an Amazon or an OpSource.
Someone who's watching this and comes at it anthropologically and says, oh, he's saying some things that I need to hear more about. So the notion of maybe okay, rapid change.
Yep.
But presumably not sustainable at that pace. So is that because technology, like most other areas, rushes forward, but then maybe, you know, now
eases back a bit, sure.
Rushes forward again. Is that really what we've got to look for here? So at the moment we're definitely on the rushing
right, and
part, but it's necessary, and then we'll just mellow a little.
And you know our philosophy on that. That's exactly what, that it rushes forward, and people will tend to say, okay, well, it's rushed forward, and this is, you know, people aren't really going to do this. But the other side to that is over the long term, they tend to have much deeper impacts than we expect, right? And you know, I always come back to the underlying theory behind cloud that anybody who's grown up using the internet, you know, like my sons or daughters, when they become the CIOs of organization, and especially my geeky son, they're not going to go back, right? And so when you look in 20 years from now, you can't imagine a world where this isn't the integral way on the way that companies use technology, because they're going to be run by people who know nothing different.
Right. So we have lived through an inflection point.
Yes, yeah. And so while we may rush forward, obviously we have this explosion, a very loud explosion of companies doing different services, and we don't know which of those are the ones that customers want and which don't. In the end, it's hard to believe that they won't be using that in 15 years' time. And it's funny, I will say, along with the explosion, and one of the things that we've seen in 2010, and you know, we deal with SaaS, the cloud applications, as well as the infrastructure, is that the big companies, the existing players in the spaces, the Adobes and stuff of the world, they're no longer just experimenting with this. They've seen that future, and so not only are we seeing the explosion, telecoms as well, we're getting huge adoption from telecoms, not only saying they're going to think about it, but really doing deployments, and they've come to realize, when I see them spending that kind of money, they realize we're past just the hype. And now they have customers, real customers, who are saying, I will not buy from you unless you offer it to me in this way.
But even though we're so, you know, talking about the speed, after the speed comes a pretty long haul of going down these verticals, like you're saying. I mean, the play with telecoms is a decade-long play.
Well, and you think about from the day the PC was introduced, take the IBM PC in 1980, to when client-server really supplanted mainframes and minis, it was about 20 years. Yeah, from 1980 to 2000, and there's an argument that that was accelerated by Y2K. If we hadn't had Y2K, it would have taken longer in there. And so when you look at that cycle, yeah, I mean, we're still in the early stages of adoption when you look at it in those. If you want to take when the business, you know, internet was first used for businesses, being say 96, 97, we're, you know, halfway through that. And I think when you look at how transformative it is beyond even more, maybe more so than even the PC was, because when you think about how much more we use technology now than we used to, you could see this going on for another 20 years.
Was OpSource always going to be cloudy to start with, or is it something that that resonated with you?
Thanks. This is an interesting story. We actually were we believed that these services were going to be the predominant way of adopting it, and we believed companies were going to need help getting there. And we just thought the initial companies that were going to be doing it were telecoms. Right. Well, and so we spent the first couple of years of our lives trying to work with telecoms, and not surprisingly, they had bought all of our last companies, and we were very familiar with them. And it turned out the initial companies were the software companies. You know, SaaS was kind of before cloud infrastructure was the first kind of use of the cloud for businesses, and focused on those, you know, companies like Taleo and Exactly, or Adobe and SAP. And that it's been our primary customer base. But now, as cloud infrastructure is becoming more predominant, not only are we selling directly, some of our biggest customers are NTT and BT, and they're all trying to figure out how to integrate cloud, and so you can get a network and have cloud services as part of the network they're buying from them. And now I'm selling the telecoms again. And so I had the right market only 8 years early. So, you know, we're finally seeing that, and we think that we're actually in proof of concept with 2 or 3 other telecoms on top of those two to provide cloud services, and I think that that's going to be a big part of our customer base going forward.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to keep supporting you, and we're going to keep, if I hope, interviewing you and getting to hear about what's to come.
We're going to be here at Cloud Connect 10.
The shape of cloud to come. Cloud Expo 10, that's more like it. Thank you so much, Treb Ryan, and thank you for joining us here in New York City out there on the World Wide Web.